everybody. Welcome to the Dominate Ductless podcast, where we tell the stories of entrepreneurs who are building their businesses that are focused on ductless heat pumps. I'm Mike Cappuccio, the owner of Dominate Ductless, and I'm really excited today to have Jon Kearney from Kearney HVAC. Jon is located in Salisbury, Massachusetts. And good morning, Jon, and thanks for joining the podcast.
Good morning, Mike. Good to hear from you.
Good to see you too. So, Jon, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your company, how you got started, and your day-to-day roles and what you do in your business.
Sure. Yeah. So, I've been in the HVAC space since I was a kid. With a family friend growing up that had an HVAC business, so I'd work with him in the summers. So once school wrapped up, kind of decided that was where my path was going to take me. So worked for some other outfits, got training, got licenses, had the opportunity to go to Utah, relocate. The company I was working for here was closing the branch. And so I went over there, did some management stuff for service experts in Utah. When I came back, I decided it was time to try and give it a go on my own. So started with just me in a van, started with putting flyers in mailboxes, doing little jobs here, little jobs there. And it kind of just developed into growth and adding new people to the operation every year going forward. And, we're currently in year 15, and I think there's 20.
Wow.
23 of us here working now, and have some great people that have been with me a long time. And day to day I'm still selling, still in the field, wearing all the hats, trying to keep the train on the tracks.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Very interesting. I mean, it always seems to start out that way. You start a business with a vision, and all of a sudden it becomes a company, and people and everything else starts to come with it. So what are your day-to-day roles now in your company?
I'm still doing some sales, a lot of management. I have some great managers in place. I have service manager, install manager, office manager. So they're trying to, handle keeping everybody else in the field on task, and I'm assisting them. I'll still jump in and run emergency service when I need to, and help in any capacity I have to, but trying to work on the business, developing processes, understanding costing. It's funny because when people get into this, they're typically from the tech or the install side. You very rarely get an HVAC company that's run by a business person, right? So this business part, the acronym of the business, is all something that's learned along the way, developed along the way. And hopefully you have people like your courses, and, we see it all the time where great HVAC guys fail at business. And it's not because they can't execute the work for the homeowner. It's because they have no idea how to actually run a business.
Yeah, they don't know margin. They don't know markup. And, I always say that to guys. It's so important. We had one guy in a class a few weeks ago, and he made a funny comment to me at the end of the class. He was like, "I feel like this is a class where you don't want guys like me in it, where everyone in this class doesn't like me because I'm a one-man guy." And I said, "No, that's not the case." I said, we're trying to teach these one-man shops how to become 10, 15, 20, 100-man shops. And you're not going to get there if you can't price jobs properly. And that usually happens within the first 2 or 3 years when they start to hire more people, Jon. They don't understand the pricing stays the same and nothing changes. And then all of a sudden they don't have any money to do what they have to do. So it's very, very, different, as far as doing that. So I'm going to stop, Don. You probably have to cut this section out, but how's the sound? Is the sound okay, Don?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure as I saw the chat. Okay. So, Jon, how, I guess how did we first meet, you and I? I know we've heard of each other for a while, but how did we first actually meet?
I think we definitely met at some events years back. You know, you have the dealer meetings and that kind of stuff. And then I think I ended up in one of your first Dominate Ductless classes a while back. So I think that's where we actually formally kind of started having more advanced conversations.
I know we've got a few mutual friends and mutual people that we've met
Yep.
along the way, and everyone hears good things about each other and how they're running their businesses and what they're doing. So, John, let me ask you this: how did the Dominate Ductless training help you or your company, if at all? I guess I'm going to say, you come to a class for 2 days, and that's a lot of time for a business owner to take away from their company, and to really spend time with myself. And what did you leave there with? And what is it that really kind of, I guess, let me ask you this a different way: is what made you want to come to that class?
So I wanted to come to that class because I'm always interested in other people's takes on how to successfully operate, kind of going back to not being a businessman first, when you get into this. I think I'm always trying to talk to other business owners, other people in the industry. It's important to network with other people. I think anybody that's willing to talk to you about their business and be open and honest, you should take the time to do the same and reciprocate, because I have friends that own bigger companies, smaller companies. We're constantly bouncing ideas off each other. Hey, I ran into this. What did you do? So I think, if anything, it's just getting somebody else's take on a situation or how to handle a certain thing. If you take something small out of every one of those conversations, you're only going to help your operation. I think when I went to Dominate Ductless, I was pretty far down the line as far as having developed processes, understanding my pricing structures and things like that. But I think every single person that owns a small business in this space should take that class. Because what I would harp on more than anything else is understand how much it costs to run your business. And your course will do that. I was fortunate enough at year 3 or 4 of business to be taught by somebody how to properly price a job, how to understand what your overhead burdens are. I was in year 3. I thought I was crushing the world on fire. I had done, I don't know, $400,000 or $500,000 worth of work. I had like $6,800 in my bank account. And I was like, I just killed myself for an entire year and didn't make shit for money. Why? And that's when I took a course and understood, okay, well, you've got insurance costs, you've got gas costs, you've got truck costs. Even if you're a 1 or 2 man operation, you need to understand that, because undercutting everybody to get the work or doing work for cheap doesn't necessarily benefit you. And especially if you're a smaller operation, your time is valuable. You don't have somebody else to go do a job for you. You better be getting enough for the job you're doing, or you just took on all the risk, all the time, and you didn't make any money. And now you also have to warranty that product. You have to stand by that product. So the biggest tip I have for anybody is understand how much it costs to operate your business. We check our margins bi-weekly. So we run how much it costs when we add a van, when we add an employee, when we have health insurance that gets given to another employee. And, you don't want the job you don't make any money on anyway. And I think that's hard for people to understand when they're first getting started. They want every job.
Yeah.
The best job you have is the job you don't take.
Exactly. And I always say that. You ever have a job where you wish you wrote someone a check for $500?
Yep.
We've all had one of those jobs. But you know what I really picked up when I was listening to that conversation was you learned it early on. And I'm going to tell you that that's not the norm usually. And I got to commend you for that. That you said to yourself, wait a minute, I think I'm really good, but I'm not. And you went and got help. You went and got the help. And I think where a lot of guys don't grasp that is they don't get the help that they need. I mean, I had a business coach for 25 years of being in business, and I'm going to tell you, she was tough, and she was my boss. And you know what? And I think that is super important for small businesses, is to have somebody to coach you and to make you really understand. Because look, we were just technicians, and we're good technicians, but you know what? I found out early on too, John, I was a horrible business person, horrible. And I learned about 5 to 6 years into it, and after I bought a residential company, that I knew nothing about the residential sector, and I bought a company that wasn't making any money. I thought it was making money, and I almost went out of business because of it. And when you realize that and you start to get help, it really, really helps your business. And like you said, it makes you really open your eyes. I think you'll agree with me, and you said it too, was that I don't need every job. I need jobs that are profitable, that are going to keep me in business and keep me around. Because without that, it's going to be very, very difficult, you know. And I guess, let me ask you this question. If there were a couple of high-level topics that you took away from those 2 days, maybe two. Usually, you know, when I go to a training, I still sit in a lot of trainings myself. I do a lot of research and stuff. I always look to walk away with two things. If I walked out of that room with two things that I said to myself, you know what? I can implement these and help my business. What would those might have been?
I think the pricing structure would certainly be on the forefront of that. You know, you had a different way of arriving at the same thing that I use, and I've actually now adopted how you were doing it. I just thought it was a cleaner version of what I was already doing.
Maybe.
And then I think the other thing was some of the organizational tips, right? So you see people all the time that are scattered. And when you're scattered, you're not going to be efficient. And you're not going to make any money in this business if you're not operating efficiently. So I think putting some of the organizational processes in place, van stock lists, shop inventory lists, a lot of that stuff that you provide in blank forms, things that you can implement in your operation, I think those are hugely important. And it made us step back and take a look at, you know, we have a very large warehouse that's stocked incredibly well. Is it organized? Do the guys know that if I'm buying something in bulk for a better price, if the guys can't find them or see them or know where they're at, they're going to go to the supply house and pay 30% more for the same product. So I just wasted overhead and time and effort because I wasn't organized enough in that part of it.
There's one thing I always measured in my business, that it was brought up to me very early on with one of the coaches that I had worked with and my accountant, was that cost of goods sold percentage wise to what the revenue was. And when I looked at that, when we first, you know, when I had spoken about maybe almost going out of business, my cost of goods sold went out of control from 1 year to another with the ratio. And then when I really started to look at it, I was like, oh my God, we're buying all this stuff that we don't need. It's being put in corners, it's being thrown away. Who knows if it's being stolen or whatever's happening with it, but my cost of goods sold went out of control. And I always tell guys, look at 25% cost of goods sold to revenue is extremely well. 30%, 31% is really good. You're running where you need to be. I was measuring a company the other day. I was on a call with a gentleman that I coach, and I was looking at it, and his cost of goods sold to his revenue was 56%. And when I looked at the bottom line, it was negative 11,000. He wasn't making any money. And it was like, boom, there it is. There's your problem in your business right there.
I think I see it all the time, especially when I have employees come in from other operations. I've seen other operations. One thing we've always done is, and it takes a little bit of extra effort, and you have to have somebody that's willing to do it or put somebody in place to do it, but we prep jobs for our staff. So instead of handing the guys an invoice in the morning and saying, go to the supply house, your employees going to the supply house is the biggest waste of your money in this industry. Keep them out of the supply house. They're going to buy crap they don't need. They're going to waste time. So we have a pile of stock for a job, a job stock list for what you need to execute that job. That's ready for the guys in the morning. Now they're not wasting any time going to the supply house. They're not buying extra crap they need. We know what left the door for that job. So we know if we set a 164-foot line set and they need 20 feet, we better be getting a large roll back for the next job. And that eliminates a lot of waste and it eliminates a lot of time. And I think very few companies operate that way, and I think it would be a great way for a lot of people to improve their efficiencies.
They don't. And you know, I used to measure that by, and I was pretty anal about it. In my business was I had startup reports that I gave you guys, and I would have a startup report and look and say, okay, that was a 26-foot line set on the startup report. Well, we gave you a 164-foot line set. Where is the other 125 feet? It didn't come back. Well, where is it? You know, that's inventory control, and that's how you control that cost of goods sold.
Yep.
You know, I agree with you. It's like, I mean, that was what was happening to me when I bought that residential business. I didn't know better. I was giving guys blank checks. You know, and then you know, now it's 30 days later and you're getting an invoice and it's got a drill on it. It's got pliers on it. It's got truck restock on it. All these things that, you know, guys can't get a good process down of job setup and how to restock a vehicle. I see a lot of guys in training, there's no restock process of how to restock a truck because there's no inventory control.
Yep.
And doesn't the inventory manager pay for himself?
Oh, 100%.
If you're paying that guy $1,200-$1,500 a week, whatever you're paying him, you're saving thousands a week by doing that, by keeping that person in there. So, I mean, I guess in closing, John, you know, if you had recommendations for other contractors around the country that, you know, they're getting into, we see a lot of guys getting into heat pumps now. What would you tell these guys?
Well, I'd certainly tell them to start by making sure they take advantage of the resources that are out there. Your class, again, and this is not to fluff you up or anything like that, but understanding what you're doing, how to make money is very important. You know, you don't want to get frustrated at this. You don't want to work a year and realize you could have made more money working for somebody else. Take advantage of these resources. Go to the trainings. You know, a couple days away from the field is not going to kill you. And I would recommend anybody take advantage. All of these distributors are constantly putting on courses. There's a million things on the internet you can watch and read through your manufacturers, through your distributors. Take advantage of that stuff and, you know, don't be afraid to turn a job down. You know, you get a bad vibe from somebody, they're probably going to screw you. So go with your gut. And, you know, I see people do it all the time. They throw a huge number at somebody and say, oh, well, if I get the job, it'll be worth it. Guess what? It won't be. If you have a gut feeling about something, you can very nicely handle the situation by saying, you know, I suggest you go in a different direction here. I see so many people get burned, and they say, the first thing they said to me was, I knew this guy was going to burn me. Well, if you knew he was going to burn you, why'd you do the job to begin with? And then secondly, growth. If you want to build a company, grow in a manner in which you can control it. So during that kind of COVID boom, I saw so many great companies that are now out of business because they hired 15 guys, they bought 15 vans because at the time they could keep those people busy. Don't hire somebody unless you know you can keep them busy for the next 12 months. That sustained growth will keep your costs under control. You'll be able to understand if you're still making money as you slowly grow, because when you start laying people off, you're never going to get them back. The last thing you want to do is, good employees are hard enough to come by. Hire a good guy and find out you're going to lay him off 3 weeks later because you're never going to get that person back again. So grow in a manner in which you can control and you can support. That would be a huge recommendation I would have.
Those are two real good recommendations, Sean, because a lot of guys don't think like that. You know, it's slow, controlled growth. Slow, controlled growth is the way to go. And I mean, having a good forecast for it too. I like, you know, honestly, I don't feel anything wrong with, you know, 3 to 7% growth. 7% is even aggressive, I think, sometimes, because there's a lot of things that need to come with 7% growth in a company in the course of a year. And when you can't control that, it's not fun. So great advice for guys, John. John, I want to thank you again for taking, this half hour out of your day. I know everybody is busy, to join the Dominate Ductless podcast. I wish you nothing but success in the future. And thank you for all the recommendations for everybody. Have a great day, and knock 'em dead.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.